So we made up for time and got into the final quadrant of the masterclass. I was really excited about this one. The presenter of Data Storytellers is Kyle Herrman. Now, Kyle joined one of our online sessions, and with that particular cohort, we spoke with all the attendees, we have the highlights, and Kyle just kept coming up. Right? Said that either Kyle or the guy from Nestle Purina just had that approach to how it spoke and how he approached it. Even you said that people had a bunch of questions, and I took the opportunity to dive into his recipe of success, and I really found his playbook fascinating. So jokingly developed this. I mean, it's his playbook, but we even did some of the conversation on podcasts. If you listen, one of my favorite conversations as well. And Kyle has deep experience. He worked for Anheuser-Busch. He's been with Nestle for quite a while now, and it's my honor and pleasure to present you Kyle Herrman for this next data story.
Well, I kind of drew the short straw here. Not only my last, but I get to be after lunch. So hopefully you guys bring some energy and some excitement to the last session. So I get to talk to you about organizational design. It's kind of weird to be formally introduced here because I've informally introduced myself to most of you, I think if all of you, over the course of the last couple of days. And I have heard quite a few folks that consider themselves to be part of a hub and spoke model. So maybe some of this isn't new to you. I'd love your perspective on what I'm going to discuss today. So just a quick outline of what I'm going to talk through. So we'll get into some structure options. I'm talking very high level. We're not going to dive deep into org design. This is 101. Talk a little bit about our creation of the hub and spoke model. So moving from our previous existence into that model and how we set that up and managed it. I'm going to talk through some issues we found with it. So there were, every change comes with problems, and some strategies that we took to make it a success and try to get it back into a course correction. And then close with just a brief word on some professional development for analytics professionals, some things that I've learned along the way, and I think things that we've definitely been speaking to either directly or indirectly throughout the last couple of days. So that's what we're going to discuss. So just to start us off, very simple model, right? You can look at analytics in one or two spectrums, right? We can be completely centralized. The positive here is that if you don't have a lot of resources, we can congregate those resources onto a single team and get some bandwidth, right? So it's a good strategy for folks. A lot of people think that this is the best approach for starting out in analytics, setting up a data and analytics function. The downside here, though, is that you become the bottleneck, right? It's really hard to satisfy all the needs of all of your spoke organizations. And by spokes, I roughly mean, the domains, the business aligned, right? Finance, sales, marketing, supply chain, procurement, those kind of different departments. Who here feels like analytics is centralized for you all? Okay, so pretty decent crew. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, you got the decentralized approach, right? Where on the decentralized side of the equation, there's a separate data and analytics team for every vertical, for every department, for every business domain area. The benefit here is that you have dedicated people that can gain deep business knowledge on the domain. So if you sit in finance, you're with finance, you can develop that knowledge about finance in addition to the data and analytics space. The downside, though, is that there's really no governance or oversight across all of analytics. And so here's where you end up with multiple sources of truth, multiple systems of record. And kind of the worst case scenario, in my opinion, is where the executives lose faith in analytics in general because they're so tired of seeing multiple conflating versions. And that was certainly us. So when I look at Purina, I have an interesting path. I've been there 20 years. I left Purina because I was really tired of them not changing. Went to our parent company, Nestle, and then came back 7 years later. And so some of these problems have existed for a really long time at Purina. But we were definitely on the decentralized side of the equation. Raise your hand if you feel like you're more decentralized. Yeah? So a little bit more on the decentralized side. Okay, and you know, some of these maybe is like some hybrid of them both. So in the middle, I mean, you can talk to any consulting firm right now, and this is one of the buzzwords, right? It is a hub and spoke model. Every consulting firm is selling a version of a hub and spoke model. You don't have to pay a big consulting fee for it. You can Google it and find all sorts of great information. But that's neither here nor there. The point of the hub and spoke, though, is to try to get the benefit of both sides of this continuum. So I do have a centralized function that can provide governance, provide standards, provide some oversight and some business domain knowledge. Not business domain knowledge, but across the enterprise. But then you partner with data and analytics team members that are in each of the spokes. And they become the domain experts. And so you provide the technical depth, and they provide the business domain knowledge. And I'm not wild about the picture. You can Google all sorts of different ways to look at the picture. The link is on the slide if you want to read this particular article. But one of the things I do like about this is that in order for this to succeed, you really have to form a community amongst the spokes. And so the dotted line around the spokes here is signifying that the spokes become a community of data analytics practitioners in your organization. And if they don't champion, the point of the hub and spoke model, then this is setting up for failure. The downside to the hub and spoke model is that you are not, if you're in the hub organization, you tend not to have authority. So you are trying to influence the organization without authority. And that becomes a significant challenge. So if you might be asking, is this something new, or if this is news to you, there's lots of information on how this has been coming to fruition over the last 5 to 10 years. This was a survey done. I know you can't read the particulars here, but it was a survey done of 100 data analytics professionals, very much in similar roles to us in this room. Asked them what's the most ideal organizational structure for a data analytics enterprise within the organization. And even though most people tend to start in the centralized side of the equation, 80% considered that to not be ideal, which I found kind of interesting in this particular survey. So 42%, and this has been on the rise. There's more and more folks setting these up and thinking that this is a great approach for a hub and spoke model. Okay, so let's talk about creating this for Purina. So what we did in order to create this, and by the way, I'm standing on the backs of giants. This was not me. Like, there's a whole crew of people that did this. So I'm referring to it as me, but obviously there's a big crew. So one of the benefits that Purina did was we did hire a consultancy. I joked earlier about the consultancy. When you're going to do an org change, consultants are great for just providing legitimacy. Purina is one of those places where if it comes from a consultant, it must be correct. And if it comes internally, it must be, we must question and be skeptical. So that certainly held true for us. So we had them set us up with the hub and spoke model, but we also had folks across the enterprise. So we set up a committee of people from every domain expertise that were part of this committee and worked in creating this process. It had top-down support, so the executive said, whatever this consultancy and this committee come up with, we are going to implement. So they certainly blessed it and gave us their permission, but it also had that bottom-up buy-in because everybody from the different departments pulled in their own team and their own folks and made sure that they were understanding of what this was and what it meant and how we were going to put it into place. From a resourcing standpoint, we had a senior vice president that was selected to lead and manage the centralized hub organization. There were a couple existing IT groups that were data analytics groups that were already centralized, and they became kind of the core group at the beginning. The senior VP reported in, and still reports in through the chief growth officer, which I know there's a big, we can talk at length about where the best place is for this particular department to report in, but that's where we netted out. And then one of the coolest things I think my leadership did is that they selected business leaders to be product owners. So when you think about the hub organization, we are creating data and analytics products, and we found business people to come over and be product owners. So they are, they already had relationships. So for example, we pulled a marketer, right? Somebody who had lived and breathed marketing for the last, I think she was there 7 years. And she came over and she decided, hey, I'm gonna run marketing data analytics products for the hub organization. I already have the relationship with all the marketers. So therefore, and it gives us some legitimacy, right? We're not seen as being just IT. I don't know about you guys, but in our world, IT was not seen as a positive. No, that was not a very positive label. And so that's one way we got around it. We had a lot of technical professionals, but we had business people who were kind of the front, face-to-face, customer-facing person. We also branded ourselves. Generally speaking, there's a stereotype of analytics professionals that we're not great marketers. I think this is an often overlooked piece of the puzzle. We decided to call ourselves The Hive. You can claim whatever you want to about our particular brand, but that's what we went with, and people love it. People talk about The Hive. They don't talk bad, they still talk bad about IT. They don't talk bad about The Hive, and we're one and the same. I mean, it's not that different. We do have the business people that are the customer facing, but the branding really went a long way. So you'll hear me, I probably will slip and call ourselves The Hive. Just keep in mind, The Hive is the hub. They both start with H, and so it gets rather confusing, but that's what we've branded the hub organization. Yeah?
Is the Hive IT plus analytics?
I'm going to answer your question actually more specifically later, but yes, and there's other parts of it too. So I'm going to purposely not answer your question yet. Okay. The other thing is, we went with this branding a little too far. So this is like a beehive, and so therefore each team within the hub we're calling swarms. So when I refer to a swarm, it is a team within this hub organization, and then all of our, we have lots of hexagons all over the place. So it's fun. Okay, so let's talk about how we manage this hub organization. So we stood this up. I'm not going to talk at length about this one, but we've moved from waterfall to agile. We do work in 2-week sprints. We've made that shift from project management to product management, and all of that entails. From a purpose standpoint, we have both business aligned swarms or teams, and enablement swarms or teams. And I'll go into that in some detail here in a bit. But the business aligned swarms are aligned to a given data domain. So, we're a CPG company, we sell in retail. So you would expect a lot of sell in and sell out data related to retail. So we have a retail activation and marketing swarm within our hub organization. We have an ensuring supply swarm that's all about everything that goes through our factories and all of our supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. So I could talk all those business line swarms. The enablement swarms, on the other hand, are more focused across the entire enterprise or across the hub organization themselves. So the enablement swarms are like governance, literacy, data literacy. AI/ML is the swarm that I particularly lead, and we are one of the enablement swarms. So we're trying to enable the AI/ML across the enterprise. We are set up in such a way that we are part of a matrix organization. So we have practice guilds, and this is how we set up the organization. So your HR supervisor is your guild lead, and our guild leads are around a particular set of skill. So we have a data engineering guild, we have a data science guild, we have a product management guild, and the guild leader is your HR supervisor. But then you are part of a self-organizing team and part of Agile, and that's the swarm that you are in. And the swarm is focused on the business entity. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this matrix organization. So the business aligned swarms, they are targeted against a stakeholder. And so I put just a generic chart for an org chart because they're roughly organized by business domain, but it's more around the data that supports those business domains as opposed to just marketing, just sales, just supply chain. They are multidisciplinary skill sets. So each business aligned swarm will have a product owner. A lot of times we have a business analyst, they have data engineers, they have a scrum master, And that is part of what you are trying to work on in your sprints, and you're developing against the business requirements, business needs. And as I said, they're aligned against a particular data domain. So another particular data domain is all like the P's. People are in the CPG understand this, right? Product, pricing, promotion, like that whole ball of wax. So we have a commercial strategy and insight swarm as well. The enablement swarms, on the other hand, have a broader focus. So we have stakeholders across the enterprise. So my particular swarm is focused on everything in the AI/ML space, and we try to partner with everybody, which is fun for me because I get to sometimes work with somebody in a factory, and then I go work with somebody in sales, and I get the broad perspective, and so it's a lot of fun. We have both, stakeholders that are across all the spokes, but also stakeholders that are across the actual hub organization as well. So we'll work with each of the business aligned swarms. We're also tasked with building out best practices. So enablement swarms, we're trying to build out best practices and share those across the organization. The practice guilds, as I mentioned before, are focused on a skill set. So we have, architecture, for example. We have data engineering. We have a practice guild for each of the different skill sets. They are meant to build out this practice and share those skills and teach those skills and find out where there's a need for those skills across the organization. And since this is your HR supervisor, of course, it's about your individual and career development as well. And so that's where those discussions are housed. Yeah.
So what is the HR role in this?
You mean what is the role of particularly HR people, or do you mean the role of the supervisor?
Well, yeah. What are they? I guess what's their contribution, if you will, to the swarm? I guess, right? Because that's what they're a part of.
Do you mean the guild leader, the practice guild leader?
Yes, the practice leader. Yes.
What value do they bring?
Sorry, thank you. Sometimes PC gets in the way.
Yes. So let me put it this way. If you're a data engineer, for example, and you work in the retail activation space, so you are primarily working with our commercial teams, and you're focused on all the data streams that are associated with our retail business and our e-com business, that's the team you are on a day-to-day basis. Those are the sprints you participate in. But as a data engineer, my data engineering practice guild leader is over all the data engineers for the entire hub organization, not just the ones that are on the commercial space, but also the ones over here on the insurance supply operations side of things. And their goal is to say, okay, how do we get better as data engineers? What do we need to be doing in order to up our skill set in data engineering? Now, we've been working a lot on Python development, to be quite honest, right? That's something that quite a few of our data engineering community are reluctant to get into and see the value in. And so that guild lead is trying to bring that into, the practice guild lead is trying to bring that into the data engineering guild.
So it's really more from a learning and development respect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But
It's
is that because your learning and development is through your HR organization? Is that partially why?
Well, I just brought up HR in the sense that these people aren't working in HR.
Okay.
These are people in the hub organization. I apologize, that's probably confusing.
Yeah, because I was like, why?
Yeah, that's confusing.
Sorry.
I just more meant that you are, if you're a guild lead, you are a people leader, and you are doing the people lead things that you have to do with as part of HR, right? So performance reviews are December, at the end of the year. So we're all doing performance reviews across all of our people that we manage. So sorry, good question. Thanks for clarifying. Yes.
So do those practice guilds have any accountability for the actual work so the data engineers are doing, or is all of the responsibility about people management, people years doing that type of stuff? Do they actually have accountability for all of that work being done across all of the different swarms for all of the data engineers are?
No, it's a great question. No, their responsibility is solely on their development. So it is not about the performance. The performance comes from your swarm. Yeah, good question.
Clarifying question that may kind of tie into that example of the data engineer, does he report to the hub, and then I guess if he was maybe marketing or channel activation, or does he report through the leader of the guild?
His reporting line is through the guild lead, so there's a data engineering guild lead, and that's that person's supervisor. However, they work on a day-to-day basis in a self-organizing team as part of an agile setup. And so they're working in that retail space So they're getting their day-to-day tasks, right, from how do I satisfy a need from the commercial side space of the business. And it has nothing to do with their practice guild lead. That practice guild lead is solely for that person's development and career and building the practice in total, right? So data science was something that Purina, and I'm getting into this, I'm getting ahead of myself, had historically outsourced for years. And so there was nobody that was looking over the skill development of data scientists internally as a community. And so having a guild lead do that and have that be part of their day-to-day world has certainly gone a long way for Purina.
So, one last thing, as far as like scale, because I just kind of want to know, 'cause I know you guys are huge, right? So let's talk, maybe along the lines of the span of control. So, how many people are actually part of this thing you have? So the hive, let's talk about the hive. How big's the hive in relation to Purina as a whole? Because I'm really curious how that scales out to your organization.
We have 45 people in the hub organization. We have about 2,000 on site in St. Louis and about 4,000 across the U.S. People-wise.
Or in US only, in use the word over.
This particular is U.S. only.
And then the 45 is in the hub. Great. And then, but you have various other folks that are in the other functional areas.
Correct.
So 45 plus.
And those data analytics professionals, they do not report in through the hub organization. So if you're in the sales team,
You could have 5 engineers or whatever in there, analysts.
and they report in through the VP of sales.
Yeah, correct. Got it.
What about the HQ level?
In Nestle HQ,
Yeah.
they are not doing this.
So this is very specific to Purina itself.
Correct.
And like really US only.
Yes, but there's some of this is spilling over. There's people seeing this and realizing, oh, maybe we should be doing this too. So we're in process on that answer. Yeah.
Just trying to get a sense of the size of the analytics team relative to people. So you said 45 people part of the hive.
Yeah.
How many employees in Purina?
Like I said, about 2,000 on site in St. Louis and about 4,000 across, like if you include all of our sales organization across the U.S. So the product owners that we pulled in from the business, they ultimately have the P&L responsibility for what we're trying to deliver to them.
I'm not sure I understand if the practice guild is the manager of the sport.
No, the product owner is really running each swarm.
But he's wanting the relation and taking the task.
Correct.
But if I'm in your collaboration, the business is not happy with the team individually.
Well, not happy with so there's two answers there, right? Are they not happy with a particular deliverable? Yes. And therefore we didn't maybe listen to the business appropriately. Maybe we didn't understand their needs. So that's a swarm issue. So the product owner, that's the primary job of the product owner is to be that customer facing person. So that product owner needs to sit down with the business and understand why what we delivered didn't line up with expectation. We're sitting on the same floor, right? So the practice guild lead and the product owner, we're this close to each other on our floors. And so if you have a problem with a particular person's work, that's more the practice guild leads, right? And you should sit down and understand what that happens. And we can do that internally because we're all part of the sub organization. And that gets done very easily. That's the simple part.
You guys would sit and decide, is this a problem with the strategy or the objective of what we're doing as far as the swarm working on something and what that is doing versus is there technical skills that one individual is having a problem so we have to go through everything together? Correct. Yes.
It sounds more confusing than it actually is. I'm reacting to my own, this is amazing that it's difficult to explain. This seems simple. And we found folks in the business that wanted to upskill in the technical space. So they are trying to understand more and more of the technical side of things because you can be a better product owner if you have some level of depth in the technical space. We also pair them with a good business analyst who a lot of times has a deeper understanding of the technical. So that's a bridge there. But yes, that's absolutely one of the downsides of bringing a business person over to be a product owner. But we felt that outweighed the reverse. If I take somebody who's really technical and put them in a product owner role, and now your main job is you're kind of like a salesman, right? You're kind of the interface between you and the stakeholder. A lot of technical people really struggle in that way. versus business people can pick up some of the technical details enough to be dangerous, right? Enough to function. So that's the side of the equation we've erred on. The product owners actually sit in the hub organization, and they sit near the technical people. But they are constantly in meetings or sessions or walking over to the other buildings on campus in order to engage with the business people directly. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep going here. We've already talked through some of the issues that you can imagine. One of which was just this culture clash on outsourcing. Purina for a long time has been, the same thing makes you laugh, makes you cry. Purina is a very conservative organization, and we don't hire FTEs quickly. At the same time, I've worked there 20 years, and we've never laid off anyone either. So it's like, I'd rather be somewhere like this than the reverse. But as a result, anything that's new, it quickly gets outsourced. And so with the rise of what we called, data mining 20 years ago, you can replace every buzzword you want to now. Purina got into a habit of just outsourcing anything in the advanced analytics space. And so particularly on the commercial side of the business where they hold the purse strings of the organization, they always had a lot of money and not a lot of people. And so they would very quickly just buy things. And so that setting up this hub organization means you're building expertise internally. And so there's a little bit of a mismatch there culturally.
Do you get rid of your offshore resources then?
Say that again?
You get rid of the offshore resources? Because I'm assuming that's what you mean by, there were contracted people. So I'm assuming these are all offshore resources. Yeah.
Some of which, yes. Okay. I have a whole nother philosophy on outsourcing, but I'm going to hold that for our discussion over drinks because that's Let's get back to the.
I'm all about offshore.
Yes, yeah. The other thing that happened was everyone was grabbing for control. So there were different spokes that considered themselves to be hubs, and they wanted to feel like a hub. I want to control everything. I want to control resources. I want to control use cases. I want to control who does what and when. And what this highlighted is that we don't have a really good data analytics strategy. I love the strategy conversation that we had earlier. It's certainly key to what Purina has been going through. We still to this day have trouble coming up with what are our top priorities for the organization. And everybody thinks that whoever is doing the job is doing the job on the wrong thing. But if you ask them what the right thing is, they can't give you an answer. And that's a real problem. We set up what we called orchestration. And the whole point of orchestration is as an intake for new use cases. So when new use cases come into the organization, there's we just wrote our own Power App. The benefit is that it's visible to everyone, so everyone has access to this orchestration. And so any data and analytics use case that is being done across the enterprise is visible to all, and that has gone a long way in trying to align some of these resources. But as you can imagine, the struggle here is between the hub and the spokes, right? And so one particular model that I like that helps relate who should do what when is what Rebecca actually calls the layer cake. So we had an earlier conversation that you'll notice some similarities to the slide you showed me earlier. But this is one way that I think about the analytics space. So the arrow on the left is meant to show that in the lower levels it is beneficial to have a more centralized structure in place and maybe more done by IT. As you move up in the layer cake, you get to things that are more decentralized and should be out in the business. And so the lowest layer is your foundations, so tools and platforms. For us, these are our icons of choice. You can insert your icons, whatever they are. It doesn't necessarily matter. I always tell my people, most of this is going to be given to us by Nestle, as it should. And just because you prefer a different tool doesn't mean you can't get your job done with these tools. So I always tell them, let's be tool agnostic and let's get our jobs done. So this is I think Nestle's given us some fantastic foundational layer here. On top of the tools and platforms is what I call the data asset layer. If you haven't heard of the FAIR model, Google it. It's fantastic. It means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So trying to build fair data assets, you do that with the tool, the tools and platforms in the lower layer. And then this gets into things that can be more business domain specific. So the data assets you tend to build that will supply sales may be different than the data assets you build to supply your factories, for example. And then finally at the top is the consumption layer. I call it the consumption layer because you're consuming those fair data assets. This is where data and analytics plays. And both, traditional BI, I know you can talk at length about what particular model you care about here. This is just one of the many. You can Google your favorite model, but it's basically what's the data and analytics umbrella. You have the traditional BI on the left in this particular visual, and then more the advanced analytics, AI, ML stuff on the right. But regardless, you are consuming those data assets. And so when you think about my organization, this is roughly how we break out. Nestle pretty much tells us what we have access to in the tools and platforms layer. The Hive I put with a kind of a foot on both sides because we do influence the global organization. We try to say, hey, if you're going to make a change, let's make a change that benefits Purina, right? We're going to try to influence them in such a way. But the main job of the hub organization, at least at Purina, is to build these fair data assets. And the vast majority of what the Hive does is build these fair data assets for the rest of the organization. And then what is democratized the mostly into the spokes is the analytics. Purina is one of the most advanced companies I've ever seen in the BI space, that as far as democratization is concerned. We are, Microsoft Shop, so Power BI is our tool of choice. It doesn't matter what, replace it with your tool, but pretty much everybody and their little brother makes their own dashboards. There's no centralization of reporting whatsoever. It is all decentralized and folks love it. And we have a huge community of people who share best practices in that space. The orange is where we really lack, and that's where I was brought back in from the Nestle world back to Purina in order to try to stand up the data science practice and build out the predictive prescriptive space. And so for the time being, there's not much being done in the spokes unless it's outsourced, to your question earlier. So most of the advanced analytics has been outsourced historically. But this starts to get into who does what and when, right, between the hub and spoke organization.
So can you give us an example of what is the business-oriented swarm and why is that not part of the, diagnostic bubble?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Can you repeat the question? It's hard to hear back here.
Oh, sorry, the question was, one of the previous slides, it was business-oriented swarm, so I was curious if those sit in the light blue bubble, that top, or in that Hive.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So one of our swarms is focused on our consumer and veterinarian practice. And so it's one of our few areas where we actually have data at the people level, at the consumer level. And so we built a fair data asset there that is everything, trying to be consumer 360, right? It's everything that's built around at a consumer level. And we're trying to offer that then to our vet sales business or to we have a few direct to consumer business models in place. And so that is a fair data asset that we then provide to the business. So that particular swarm is building that fair data asset. Primarily, it's a data engineering task. Does that make sense? Okay.
The democratization you're really talking about is the accessibility to, say, for a lack of, or for a traditional term of semantic here, that's how you're keeping your end users out of trouble. That's really what it boils down to.
absolutely.
Got it. Okay, because I was going to ask, how in the hell are you preventing bogus reporting going out, right? Bogus numbers.
Well, I mean, we are in the sense that we are providing only certain data to certain roles, there's security there. But what they pull into Power BI and play with, we would rather err on the side of them having complete control, because that's the only way that they test and learn. I mean, I'm going to go back to Kate's example. When they put something into play, if it tells them something that's wrong, that's on them.
So the skill sets to actually do the work are at that color level.
Absolutely. But way more on the BI side of the equation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not just giving scissors and running around children. That's not
But
the
they
thing.
kind of are.
But at
That's
least,
the thing,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
they're at least knowledgeable enough about the data
Sure.
side and can be there to take away the scissors, or at least call out when the scissors are running.
Well, fair, no pun intended, but yes, right, and that's what it is. It really is about that. You are giving them somebody said, I think yesterday, rope, right? That's really what they're talking about. But what you're really saying, though, is yes, we don't want to be Isaac's going to kill me here. a data Gestapo. You know what I mean? Because we're absolutely controlling, you know, the data itself. So that's really your model. And the reason why I'm asking so many questions is because your scale is very similar to mine. I just lack about half your people. So, you know, that's my issue, right? But I get it, and I think it would work. So, sorry, I'm asking my question.
That's great. That's great.
And there, you mentioned there's a data literacy swarm, enabled this swarm as well, so they are able to learn from that the neighborhood. So
Absolutely. And one of their key tasks is we won't build something for you, but we'll put your hands on the mouse and we'll sit with you and have you do it.
that opens up so much resources.
Where does the data strategy and prioritization and data governance function sit?
The data literacy and governance is in the same swarm, and it's pretty new. And so we haven't quite cracked that code yet. This is a 2-year-old project, so we're not very advanced there.
And the prioritization, so the strategy and prioritization,
That's also, that's part of that orchestration process that I mentioned earlier.
So data assets are managed by the business.
If they're built by the Hive, we will sustain and support them. But the business has freedom to go build their own data assets. And yeah, talk about scissors, right?
So you have these swarms that are focused on specific pieces of the business. I'm going to simplify this. You have a retail piece, you have an online piece.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So then the swarm has managers, analysts, and also has data engineers. Right?
Yes.
Why? Because you're trying to structure data for that piece of business. So again, retail, online.
Yep.
So the retail structures their data in a way that's right for retail. They use that data for however they want. Now, if retail wants to go out and get all their data,
Yeah.
they can.
Yep.
Because the retail team needs it
Yeah.
to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Great. Same thing with online.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a space where, and again, I think it's going to go to the semantic layer, that if I'm a user and I want to see what happened in retail and what happened at online, do you aggregate those things together, or is that like a semantic layer where I have the ability to look at both if I'm not?
It's been driven mainly by the prioritization, right? Do we have a business need to do so? And if so, we should build it that way. So all of the fair data assets that have been built, you're trying to understand the environment that our business people play in and get those questions in advance, and then figure out where are the highest priorities, and then build according to that. So if there's a need, we would build it that way.
So, and I'm going to make one comment. Most people think about centralizing data. And actually what you guys are doing is, I think, the next evolution, which is a matrix data. Right?
Yes.
You have data here, you have data here, you have data here, you have data here. I have a layer, I can stitch it all together if you really need it.
Yep.
And we'll do that for you. We'll give you the ability to do that.
Yep.
But everyone's owning their own data, they're accountable for their own data. They're
Absolutely.
accountable for everything.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of literature on it. I've never seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the first time I've ever heard of anyone doing it. I actually spoke internally about the next evolution of data because I don't data for my company.
Yeah.
So that's why it's nice.
Follow-up question on the asset. So you said data analytics consumption, they can create their own assets. But then if the assets gets like big enough, or just like this is a Honda asset that a bunch of them would want to use, then does that get owned by data asset layer and like get managed, or?
We're not very popular with the answer, but the answer is if we didn't build it, we're not taking it on. Because that will sink the 45 people, because that all we're going to do is chase down requests or figure out how some vendor, sold us a bunch of crap and we paid $1 million for it.
It's that idea of like prototyping and making cool things and then
Yes.
feeding and watering.
Yes.
So does data stewardship occur at the Hive level in data assets? And they're the ones that are most talking to the foundational folk, and then from there, the data consumption occurs at the spoke level? Or where does data stewardship?
It happens at the top in the consumption layer.
Data stewardship happens at the top.
Yes. The business owns their data. Because it's Purina's data. So here's one of the things that I love. Like, we used to be data owners, right? You owned data, and it's my marketing data. You need it for some, e-com use case. Sorry, I paid for it. I owned it, but I need IT's help to help me figure it out, and that's why IT's just order takers. Now we're data stewards, right? And we're partners and we're collaborating with them. We will build you a fair data asset. We will set up all the security for you if we build it. But it's not yours. You're just the steward of it, and you need to make it available for marketing, but also for the e-com team when they need it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and on that. So the data stewards up top, are they also the people that are responsible for purchasing data and the contracts with data providers?
Yes.
And then how do they stay connected to know all of the places that data is going? Because from a contractual perspective, right, there could be consequences. Is that through your governance well somehow?
I kind of want to jump down the point, but I won't.
I'm using the data privacy. I'm like, how's that work?
I talked about the dotted line around the spokes. You need to have a community. And so we have a very active data and analytics community at Purina in all of the spokes. So we call them spoke leads. A spoke lead is somebody who leads data and analytics for that particular domain. So we have a sales hub. They call themselves a sales hub, even though they ripped off the name, right? But they're a spoke. And they manage all of the sales assets. They buy sales data. They are stewards of it. But we have built it and make it available to not only them, but anybody else who needs it.
Yeah, so that they're the ones that are really accountable for ensuring they're tracing where that data is ending up at the end of the day. Is it being used appropriately, current contract?
Yep. Kate, did you have something? No? Okay.
I have one more question. Because
yes.
One thing that we battle with that the middle of running is consistency. Right? You have one swarm or you have somebody up in the top consumption layer that pulls something a certain way. Right? Bear with me. How many bags of dog food last month? Somebody else could do the same thing. Is there a potential to get two very different answers? Similar answers, but different answers. Amen. Just because we don't have a level of centralization, or it's just part of the hide or part of the function where you have control. When I say control, every steward's got to be in, like, you're accountable for your own data. But as data is democratized, you have to have some way of accuracy and consistency across data. So if I pull number of dog food, bags of dog food, and you pull number of bags of dog food in the same month, it's the same.
Yeah. And I would say that spoke lead is in charge of that particular activity. So let's say I'm the sales spoke lead, and I have all these different sales managers or sales people all over the country, and they're pulling this stuff incorrectly. Then we would sit down and say, hey, how do we fix this? And so they'll put together a Power BI report, right, that does what their need is, and it standardizes it, and it's the one source of truth. And then that person is the one who champions it to the rest of the sales organization.
Well, so that's sales specific, but let's just, let's go to my previous example. Sure. So let's just say the retail channels, okay? Yeah. And I'm the online analyst. And I'm really interested because my boss wants to understand retail sales versus online sales. This is a comparison note.
Yeah.
The way I pull the data from retail space, right, matters.
Yes.
Right, the code I write, how I get it out. Is there a level of governance? I think you go back to what Alex said. Is there a level of governance where how I pull that data will be consistent if I'm a retail analyst or from the online? Yeah.
It's a great question, and I'm sure we're making mistakes. So we're not perfect.
I think that's what makes people nervous. And that's what's making you nervous.
I'm losing my mind.
Or everyone.
I am losing my mind.
Holy shit.
I'm gonna tell you.
Sorry. Just
Do you want me to finish? Because maybe we hold this until.
Laser flights.
Where you are. There we go. Cancel.
We all leave rooms.
Friday afternoon.
Let me speak to just a couple more topics, and then we'll get into the. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Like 3 more minutes.
Go for it.
Okay. So yes, there's a lot of problems, but we'll get through those. So here's a couple of things that we've done to ensure success. Number one, it's partnership. We've been very selective on who we partner with. There are certain spokes that are going to be great and are going to understand how to do this and love to work with you and love to champion the success. And there are other spokes that are going to play a political power game and try to mess this up on purpose and point fingers. And so we've been very selective in how we've started this process. We've also been very ruthless on pushing towards value. One of the questions that have come up is, how does the organization prioritize? Prioritization should be done based on potential value. If I have a $1 million opportunity and a $5 million opportunity, the $1 million opportunity people are going to get upset when I tell them, you have to get in line. I can't work for you right now. I'm going to go work for this other one. But if there's visibility into that value, then everybody understands, oh, there's another opportunity for Purina that helps my bonus too, even though I'm not in that department, right? And so we have a very strong focus back on value. And then lastly, transparency, which I've already mentioned. That orchestration system allows this transparency. It is enterprise-wide. Everybody has access to it. And you can see, including potential value of each use case. And lastly, I just want to talk about some professional development. This requires great consultation skills. As you can imagine, people are getting fired up over the issues. Those issues are solved by talking to people, communication. When I say consultation skills, a lot of this I've had to learn the hard way. Just a very quick example. One of my first supervisors at Purina, we started a new engagement with a team. I opened the session. It was an hour session. I dove right into the needs. I had a clear agenda. It's how an analytical person thinks, right? I don't want to waste their time. Let's get right into the detail. Pulled me aside afterwards and he says, you got about 55 minutes to get the job done. You got about 5 or 10 minutes for them to figure out if they like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to work with you. And that's consultation skills. If you've ever worked with one of the big consultants, like the Deloittes, the Accentures of the world, they find people who are personable, who understand how to connect with people. And that's a skill I didn't come into work with 25 years ago. I had to think about that and develop that. It means a lot of other more tactical things too. I'm always amazed when I pull in a data scientist and they don't follow up on emails. They don't, the correspondence, right? Summarize the session. You just did a workshop. Summarize the key outputs and feed them back to them. Those are some basic things that people don't tend to come in with. And that's very important if you're going to set up something like this. I've already been hammering the profit and loss, but it goes a long way if you understand the P&L. Most of us, I think all of us, work for a for-profit company, understand how, well, not all of us, some heads are shaking, but understand how your work connects back to value, whether it's a for-profit company or not, right? It does connect back to value. And then domain knowledge. Just very briefly, if you're in this hub organization, like I said earlier, I love it because I get the benefit of working across the enterprise, but the downside is that I don't ever develop deep knowledge in any one domain. And so I have to purposely try to understand a little bit more depth than somebody who sits in sales all the time, right? They live and breathe sales all the time. I have to understand a little bit more. I have to ask dumb questions. I have to come to them and say, hey, I don't quite understand this concept. We love our 3-letter acronyms. There's so many acronyms. I have to ask those acronyms over and over again. And that's okay, right? Because I understand that if I can understand their needs, then we can partner in a more effective way. So that's it. Thank you all.